Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of A Few Short Minutes, the pod, where I just want to remind you it literally takes just a few short minutes a couple times a day to rewire your brain for a better life. You guys, today uh, I have my first woman identifying dating coach. I've had a man identifying dating coach previously, but this is actually my first woman identifying dating coach, which is strange since I've already done lots of videos. But you guys, welcome Sarah Ann Rosen to the podcast. And let me tell you a little bit about Sarah Ann. So she helps women identifying singles reframe the dating game. They keep matching with emotionally unavailable people who just want attention and make minimal effort. Don't I know that? Her new program, Decoding Dating Dilemmas, you guys know I love a good alliteration, explores relationship patterns and helps clients create a personal love map and dating plan to eliminate self doubt and date with clarity to find the right person and stop settling for Mr. Right Now or Mrs. Right Now or unidentified non-binary right now. Her pronouns are she and they. She is an intersexual feminist who thinks a lot about positionality, and she is an LGBTQIA plus justice accomplice and who is learning about anti-racism, which I love. And so, Sarah Ann, introduce yourself.
Well, thank you, Stacy. I'm so excited to be here and to
Me
talk
too.
with you. Well, let's see. I grew up in New York City, and having all kinds of relationships and identities was just part of my natural landscape. And so in my life, I've um, I get pivoted a number of times. So how I got to the dating and relationship coaching realm came through another transition of deciding I didn't want to regulate human behavior, which is what I had done in a previous profession as a lawyer. And I went to school for psychotherapy, and I discovered that it kind of upholds a kind of outdated status quo, in my opinion. And I think that's especially true for a lot of marginalized and minoritized identities who just don't have representation in that profession and who weren't considered in a lot of the methods and theories that were developed over the last 100 or so years, and are still, many of which are still very mainstream today. And although during that program, I got to reflect a lot on my own patterns because, that's usually a homework assignment in psychotherapy. And it dawned on me that in my romantic relationships, I had an intergenerational pattern repeating. Me, my mother, her mother before her, partnered with men who considered themselves orphans whose parents happened to still be alive. So
Oh,
very, very strained, distant relationships with their immediate family, or at least parents. And so that was, that's what we looked for because that's what we knew. And it wasn't turning out so well. So I myself am divorced, and I've been on the dating apps. I know what it's like. And during that program, I just really thought about how to combine the psychology and the counseling and coaching techniques I was learning to actually help people really understand their needs versus the patterns that they repeat and what they expect in relationships, because we get a lot of mixed messages from families, from larger social circles, and especially from the media.
yeah, especially with social media now, which is not something that you or I really grew up with. So, how do you see that changing the landscape in particular, like the social media part of it?
I guess in my view so far, I get a sense that it has further commodified relationships. It's kind of like, I think of the McDonald's slogan, "You can have it your way," that,
Okay.
you go through a menu of options and you wanna do the à la carte, you know, I want the, this feature, but I wanna substitute this side of X for what's preassembled. And that really, I think, complicates people's expectations even more.
Yes, because when you are looking at a whole person, but you don't like this and you don't like that, that most likely is not going anywhere. And so if you can't put up with it for an extended period of time, I'm not talking traditional marriage, I'm just saying an extended, committed, long-term relationship, that shit will eventually drive you absolutely bonkers. That's my opinion. What do you think about people seeing the perfect in somebody and then but these other things that are then there I don't really like, and trying to change people or maybe shame them into changing themselves. Do you see that in your research and with your clients?
Yeah, and that's also part of why I pivoted from mainstream counseling psychotherapy to coaching, because you often get lackluster results in mainstream relationship therapy itself. And for that reason, because people go there with the expectation, oftentimes, of if we go there, the other person will change. They'll see the light.
Oh,
I will be vindicated.
yeah, for sure,
And
right? The
it's
vindication part.
mhm. And so with dating, kind of I guess with the through the channel of social media or apps, all of that, it's I think it programs you for that expectation from the start. It's like, well, if this person did not meet all 17 checklist items, like, well, they did have the degree, but I did not like their dress sense or their favorite foods or movies, then I
Yeah.
can do better. I can go back online.
Yeah, that is wild. I saw a TikTok last night and it really struck home with me. Um, and the woman said, it was on a podcast, um, that the potential that you see in others is not actually their potential. It's actually what you would have done in that situation.
Mhm.
And I've had multiple relationships where I was like, "Oh, you could do so much better and if you just apply yourself." And I was like trying to encourage them to move up, move higher, move faster, whatever it was, right? And now I see that it was just what I would have done in that situation versus allowing them to be them. Um, and some of that was a deal breaker for me, and that
Mm.
didn't. So what do you think about that quote or saying or insight?
Yeah, I think that is, well, insightful. And I would also put, another layer on that, which is, what if that's really how we want to see ourselves? That if someone else achieves this, then we feel it will reflect well on us. We will be able to kind of claim some of that for our own self-image. And because we spend one of my favorite sayings that I started saying to clients when I was doing counseling is we spend a lot of time thinking about what we think other people are thinking about us. And so to me, having a type or expecting other people to live up to certain potential feels kind of like that if they do this, I believe I will be seen or treated in a particular way, which
Yeah,
often doesn't have that solid that much of a solid basis in reality.
sure. And it's to me what came to mind when you were saying that was it's almost like uh, an Olympian's partner taking the medal too. And I'm not saying that they don't deserve it because they're the support like there's yes. However, if you go, oh no, I made him the Olympian. I told him one day he should be an Olympian, and this is what I did, and this
Mm,
is and you take the gold medal too. It's like I get it, but also there's a lot that he inputted by himself to get there or by herself to get there. Um,
yes,
yeah,
and
so that's kind of how it landed with me in that.
we overestimate because, well, we're paying more attention to ourselves than anyone else. We overestimate what we do in a relationship and for others, and we underestimate what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that now, but I'm way older than I used to be. So I think with the age traditionally, ideally comes with wisdom. And so, yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me is underestimating my partner and overestimating what I do or did for sure.
Actually, what you were saying reminded me of one of the biggest complications of social media and dating apps is comparing ourselves.
Talk about that a little more.
Well, we see these curated scenarios and images and curated emotions and experiences of others, and then we create stories from our own filters and expectations and desires about what that must mean, what it must be like. And if we could have that, then we would gain happiness, status, security, validation, worth, whatever it may be. And so then it becomes kind of like relation shopping, where we're looking to fill a void instead of understanding how we can start creating those feelings and experiences and I think sense of self positive sense of self concept through multiple channels so that we bring it to the table and we have something to share with someone instead of expecting them to provide to us what we're not actually bringing to the table of the relationship ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that in more than just dating. Even in my coaching practice, that I'll be happy when, right? I'll be happy when I lose 5 pounds, when I make $500 more a month, when my friends call back, when I move to this state, or I get this kind of job, or whatever it could be, the I'll be happy when. What if none of that happens? What if none of that happens? What are you going to do? Be miserable? I mean, that's an option. You could, but do you want to
Mhm.
be? And I see that, as you are talking about how it affects dating. Absolutely. I'll be happy when I have an executive, CEO who's 6'2" and athletic and loves kids, loves dogs. Like you can't shop like you said. It's commodified, and I've never even thought of it that way before, as it being a commodified um, version of people, and that's just it's fascinating, and it's also really depressing to me.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep. 'Cause
because then you're taking parts of a person, not the sum of their whole.
mhm, and the sum of their whole takes a very long time. Well, a lifetime and plus for the individual themselves, never mind anyone else, to really unfurl and discover. And so if we're as I know a lot of people think, well, if I don't feel like I'm gonna fall in love after one date, I don't I guess they say that I don't have the spark or I didn't feel the butterflies or
Yeah,
there
talk
wasn't the
about that.
chemistry.
Chemistry, yeah. Talk
And
about
then
what those things are in truth versus what we think they are.
yeah, that's yeah, that would be oh, we could spend hours on this. This is just fascinating to me. Um, but with the immediate sensation of I feel the spark, I feel this electricity after say 2 minutes in a coffee shop or a restaurant or a park, whatever it may be, um, what are we basing that on? We're not actually basing it on what we're learning about the person. It's, say, what they look like. And if we have that level of anxious sensations in our body that are pretty much the same as excitement, but if it's happening that quickly, that strongly, it's often our subconscious memory, which exists and functions through images and emotion that create the sensations to tell us, like to signal to us, uh, something smells fishy. I've been here before. I'm not sure. I'm trying to let you know. Like,
Proceed with
investigate
caution.
further. Yes, proceed with caution, investigate further. You need a lot more data. And people just, as we have these sensations, and depending on the context, we ourselves, with our conscious thoughts and experiences, will interpret it as either this is fun and excitement or this is scary and bad news. And so often, this spark and butterflies actually signal this could be bad news. You've gone through this before. So they
Yeah,
may have
absolutely.
different packaging, but
So
their attitudes or their body language and their assumptions and their behaviors, you've seen this before and it didn't end well.
that's why I always said I've dated the same dude in just a different meat suit.
Mhm,
Always the same guy. I
mhm,
mean, some variability, but at the core of their trauma and their issues and, what they've been through, it's always the same kind of thread running through, and that is they are wanting to be rescued, and I want to do the rescuing. And so that does not create the best dynamic years down the line for sure, ever.
right, and
Plus, now I know about my attachment style, so that's even more confirmation about why butterflies and chemistry and the spark are actually not a great thing. And that blew my mind when I learned that. My therapist told me that many years ago, and I fought her on it until I understood. And then it's like, oh,
mhm. Well, we look for what's familiar, so we like this indescribable combination of familiar novelty, so they may look totally different. So, for example, my 2 longest relationships who both kind of had a similar, very strained, distant dynamic with their parents, same height, totally different backgrounds, born in different countries, different languages, but that dynamic and, the size, similar size to me. So to me, that felt safe. So I'm the reverse of a lot of people socialized as female. I felt more comfortable with men who weren't much bigger than me because it's like, good, good. I feel safe because then less chance of you beating me up
I can take them.
if I had to. I'm from Brooklyn.
I mean, you are a New York City gal, so that does make sense. And yes, I am the traditional of like, plus I'm 5'4", so um, like 6 foot plus, I feel safe.
Huh.
Uh, but under that, it's like, I could probably take you.
But what I realized years later is that let's say for height, whether you like shorter or taller, it's really just a symbol of this subconscious meaning that you've developed. So I think for me it was, say, coming from a nonconformist family who really did question gender stereotypes and other things. My father did the cooking, the grocery shopping, the laundry. I was his helper. He did the gardening, all of that stuff. And so I would see TV commercials and TV shows where the men who were thought to be, say, the main characters, the heroes, the cool guys, they were just arrogant as hell. They bullied people. They were obnoxious. They were entitled. And I couldn't articulate that as a kid, but I knew I didn't like them and I did not want to associate with people in my peer groups who resembled them.
I could just see 7-year-old Sarah Ann watching an All in the Family Archie Bunker episode and going, "What? What is this guy saying?" Um,
Yes,
yeah,
you are so on the nose. I still talk about Archie Bunker all the time. I can
that's funny.
reference
You and I,
spec
we've never had that conversation. So yeah, go ahead because I want to hear this for sure.
I still share clips with people who aren't so familiar with it. Like, "Look, Archie Bunker was the first show to talk about periods." Let's see, was it huh, and I can't remember which was the first show around that time to show people sleeping in the same bed,
Oh, yeah.
but they had a lot of firsts on that show. And true to form as a New Yorker, you can still catch me sometimes like Archie Bunker, like at the TV when as a kid, like, 7-year-old me literally would do that when I would see, the women being praised for, look, I cleaned my man's collar and whatever you do, whatever you do with collars, I don't know, but
Yeah, the ring around the collar.
that's it.
Yeah, that was a Ti either a Tide commercial or an All commercial. I can't remember right now. But yeah, it was, "Oh, how do I get this ring around the collar out?" Just
Yes.
so misogynistic. And
I would
it's
be visibly annoyed as even a 7-year-old. And yep, I would
yeah.
do the Archie Bunker.
So what did you think about Archie Bunker? Because yes, they had all these firsts, but he was also misogynistic and racist.
Yeah.
So that dichotomy must have been kind of confusing too.
Not to me, because he had all the supporting characters who would argue with him, and so I was clearly a Gloria and Meathead supporter. And Edith, love Edith. So
Okay,
to
so
me,
you
it was just putting Archie on display as, you know, we're making an example of of what being racist, being so fearful. Because from my psychology background, I would just interpret that as that's this long suffering fear response to the world. Whatever happened throughout his life, very, 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 very fearful.
yeah, he's an example of what not to do, for sure, for
Hmm.
sure. Um, what else has influenced your thoughts and theories about dating? Because I know you're very analytical, you're very data driven, you love research. So any kind of fact, statistic that she gives out, you guys, it is backed by a few sources, not just one. And I love that about her. And so, where do you kind of mainly draw from for your decoding dating dilemmas?
Well, I actually draw from a lot of places because, like you said, I really do love research, and I love to research outside of just one discipline. It's not just, say, relationship psychology. So I like to compare. What do the main researchers agree on? What do they disagree on? Or maybe they just have a different approach to basically the same idea. And that's largely what I find. Different approaches, similar ideas. So we can look at, say, the Sternberg's theory of love stories, which is, I
Explain that a
think
little
they've
bit.
come up with 27 theories. So we are programmed in a lot of cultures in the US to believe in the knight in shining armor, damsel in distress. Just today, I was reading, I think on Instagram, someone shared a post of a woman asking for advice because she'd been on one first date. I think they're in their mid 30s. And she said it went really well. And for the second date, the guy suggested they just, go somewhere to watch the sunset. And she was insulted. She said, he's not trying to impress me. I thought,
Oh,
oh, okay. So it's really about an experience and about a thing. And again, coming back to self concept, I need to be seen as a person who deserves, say, being
Is
receiving
worthy
something of
of.
monetary value.
Yeah, is
And
worthy of being entertained or catered to or
mhm,
whatever. Yeah, that's
yeah.
very interesting. I call that the Disney did me dirty concept
I love
of.
that because they sh
Yeah,
yeah, I would agree. They did. 'Cause
yeah. Mhm,
there
go ahead.
was no there didn't I didn't read in that post any concern or interest for who he was. Did she know? I don't know. Was it all about the restaurant? Was it all about a location, getting access to some kind of experience or a price tag? I don't know. But there was nothing about his values, his character, and that would have given her a chance to actually get to know him. So without, because one of my pet peeves about going to restaurants is a lot of them play loud music. So how are you really going to get to know someone? So I would avoid those places.
Yeah. Or bars, same thing.
Yes. Yeah. And
We've got a couple of tiki bars here, and they're really cool, but God, I cannot hear anybody other than myself in my head, because it's just obnoxiously loud. I love going there, and I did a couple first dates there, but I wouldn't go back and do a first date there again because it was just so loud. I couldn't really connect or listen to the intonation or, you know what I mean? It just kind of muffled everything. So,
and
yeah,
that's
I get
so
that.
important that you realize that. That's really impressive because
It can be taught.
because now I also draw a lot from neuroscience because and in my opinion, having gone through the counseling master's program, they're not catching up fast enough in my opinion in a lot of programs. It's a what we now realize is that more let's see, over 95% of our thoughts and whatever our brain's doing is outside of our conscious awareness. It's really the nervous system behind the scenes, and we have no clue. It starts the decision process for us in many cases seconds before we catch up in our conscious minds. And so there are like 40 bits of data from our eyeballs, from our ears, from our nose, all of that, just our senses being processed that we're aware of. And there, I think it's around 11 million that we're just not aware of because there's too much too fast. So we've
Wow.
got the equipment and it's handling it us. It's handling it for us. So what you were saying about you couldn't really focus or get a sense of the person's intonation, like that is that is how we get to know someone through all of these little teeny micro pieces of sensory information, how they look at us, how they pause, are we speaking at similar speeds? All of that really matters.
Body language,
Mhm.
what words they're actually using as well, because those
Yes.
could be, I don't want to say predatory, but okay, so I'm going to say aggressive. They could
Yes.
be mis misogynist, it could be, um, dismissive, or it could be supportive and amiable and, um, just joy, and you would miss that if you couldn't hear, what they were
Yes.
saying clearly. Am I
And
right, coach?
yes, completely. And if you're able to pay attention and tune in, like that's another approach to relationships is like the attachment theory approach. So the love stories approach, 27 love stories, you might approach relationships as a business, or you might approach it as a fairy tale, or you might approach it as an adventure story, or as a teacher student story. Like they're a lot. And
Okay.
and I think they are informative for people to reflect on assumptions, values, and patterns.
Yeah,
And
that
to
sounds like a great guidebook to
Mhm.
figuring out how I date or what I think I'm looking for versus what I actually need. And you're going to
Mhm.
talk about attachment theory, which is so crucial, I think, in every realm of our relationships, even relationships itself. But she's going to about it in relation to the dating and relationship category. So go ahead.
'Cause that will will give you a lot of insight as to, because, well, now for some statistics. So, according to a lot of surveys, people are quite jaded about the people they're seeking to date. So, the most recent Tinder survey, for example, that came out a month or two ago, found that, I think they specifically focused on cisgender women and cisgender men who are looking for relationships with the opposite sex, or gender, I should say. And so they found that the majority of women believed that the majority of men were just looking for casual hookups, whereas the majority of men, at least over 50%, said, no, I'm really looking for an actual relationship. And the men assumed that the women were looking for things like, oh, she won't consider matches unless they have, say, a graduate degree or a certain job title. And so they overestimated that. And the women claimed, very few women claimed that that was, a big priority for them. So whether that bears out in the choices they make is always a question mark.
Yeah, for sure. We hear it all the time. There are no good men left. Where are all the good women? You know,
Hmm.
I hear it all the time.
Hmm.
Vegas is a dating cesspool. So it is a
Oh, yeah.
cesspool here.
That
Both
would be
sides.
fascinating.
Both sides. It is
Yes.
rough. So much so that I just gave up. I'm not I just gave up. I'm just not
Ouch.
yeah, I don't have the energy for it to do all of the yeah, I just don't.
Ouch.
I don't want to place my energy there. That I should say, rather.
And
But yeah, so there's no good insert gender here,
yes,
is a
of
common
that.
theme that we hear everywhere, but especially
And
here.
and so with all of our cognitive biases, and even so, there's a specific part of the brain, the reticular activating system, that takes the information. Like, if you say there are no good men, you're just going to look for the information in your environment that confirms that. So, confirmation bias. Or
Yeah.
say, let's say the person says, I'm too old. Everybody else in a relationship, or who's, getting what they want in relationships, is younger than me. Well, then, okay, then that is what your brain is going to focus on and is going to confirm for you over and over and over again. But also, going back to the statistics, so we it looks like we have an overly cynical and inaccurate view of the people we're looking to date. Number one, but number two, there's also been some studies about honesty in dating profiles. That's also a huge concern. And so, what they found, which of course still leaves question marks, but suggests that it's not so common for people to be really deceptive. And of course, catfishing, scamming,
Married people.
swindling, it's out there. Oh yeah, and as that's another interesting point. But for half truths and white lies, those are the most common, and the vast majority of people, at least who've been surveyed, admit to doing it in some fashion at some point in their dating profile. And but a lot of it is really for the aim of coming across as more similar to the person that they've matched with. To say, they might stretch the truth a bit about how much they like a specific hobby, or how much they work out each week.
How much you
So
love banjo music.
or that, yeah, because you want the other person to relate to you, to, like, you're like me, like, we have something to share. So it's really, it's not a there's no malicious intent to hurt anyone, to take something from them. It's in the hopes of connecting for the
It
most part.
almost sounds like self-preservation in a way.
Yes.
Yeah, so to
Yes.
not get rejected immediately or
Mhm.
ignored or whatever, it sounds like it's coming from a self-preservation versus, "Oh, I don't wanna hurt their feelings," which is interesting to me because I would have always assumed that it was a I'm trying to be nice and let them down easy or whatever. But then when I heard you explain it, it clicked that this is self-preservation. It has little to do with the other party. Am I on the right track?
I think that both are true.
Okay.
That they want to, yes, that they don't want the rejection, and they just want to have that feeling of having someone be excited about, you like that too, like that's so cool.
Yeah, that
And then,
validation.
yep, the validation of, and then they're imagining, what I like to say, looking ahead a few steps into the future. Like, then, if I say this and they receive it well and they're excited about it, that will mean that this will make it much more likely that we actually get to a date. Maybe it will, maybe it won't.
Yeah,
And
I um had a guy who I got along famously in the messages. Like he was funny, he was witty, I really enjoyed talking to him, whatever. And we went out and he did nothing but um basically patronize and just spoke ugly about some professions, and one of them was the place that I was actually working at the time, and my best friend, because he was like, "I hate real estate agents. They're all leeches." And I was like, "Wow, I told you that's where I work. That's my job." And my best friend, who is an amazing agent, it's like he insulted her directly. So I was like, "Nah, bro, like we're done here." But yeah, it's wild when you've got when that starts to happen. It's really crazy. So I wonder now from meeting you and talking to you about this, because we're friends in real life, you guys. So we've got some inside jokes that we might like the banjo thing. You wouldn't know why, but we get it. Um, so from talking to you now, though, and I look back on that date and look back on those messages, and I wonder how much I was injecting myself into his messages. So because they're so freaking subjective all the time, right? I wonder if I was holding up his end somewhat or making him more interesting than maybe he truly was. And I wonder if I missed some, they're not red flags, but just some things that maybe wouldn't have set well with me if I had really investigated them. I don't know. It's just
that's a really
interesting.
good way of putting it. Things that wouldn't have sat well with me is learning to trust our own senses and the little signals our body gives us is so crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. So, explain some of those body signals that most of us would probably be dismissing. What are you talking about?
Well, I'll give examples from my own life on the apps. When when I match with someone and I start messaging, and the first message, say I ask a personalized, engaging question, I try to be brief and a little witty, light, but also specific to engage them in something that is, y something that they like or excited about or that they enjoy doing. Like, so to have them give me their spin on it, because it should be unique to them in some way or another. And then I get something back, and then if they don't reciprocate or their tone, like they do not return any levity, or if they just launch into an essay on all the details of, well, then I went here and then I also learned this under so and so, and it goes on and on and on, and they're not returning the ball.
Yeah, there's no reciprocity there.
Well, in a way, they're throwing all these balls at me. It's like, here,
Yeah.
you do something with this. I feel it. I now recognize this sinking feeling of like, ugh, they want me to organize this. They want me to handle this. This is heavy. This is drudgery. It's like, okay, I'm done. Because if they are that unaware of the impression they're making, and they have that little concern for my part of the experience with them, this is not going to be good.
Where do you feel that heaviness? Just to give people a kind of a anchor point to start listening to their own bodies because, as you know, we are so disconnected from our brain and our body. Most of us walk around in autopilot, which is just subconscious thinking every day. How do you know if you're there? If you have ever driven to work and don't remember the drive, or driven to school and you're like, how did I just get here? You're completely gone. You're absent. You are on autopilot. And most of us live our life like that. Like Sarah Ann said earlier, 95% of what we do is subconscious. So that literally means 5% is available for you to really notice and change immediately. Um, so I don't even remember what I was going to ask. I'm so sorry.
No, not at all, I remember.
Oh,
It's
good.
where do you feel that
Yeah. So where do you feel
heavy
that in your
sinking
body?
feeling?
Hmm.
It really starts from my head, so it will be somewhat different for most people, but my face falls. My energy just drains a little, and then I feel it in my chest, just this heaviness and this, "Oh, great. What do I
Yeah.
do with this?"
Mine's a eye roll and a ugh. So I definitely start feeling it. This is kind of where my anxiety lives anyway.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm like, ugh, and I definitely feel it right. It's kind of hanging out like a bad bowl of oatmeal. If that makes sense to anybody else, just how heavy and you're like, man, I shouldn't have eaten that. Like, oh, why did I? Yeah, that's kind of what
Yep,
it feels like to me. A heavy
and it
bowl of
could
oatmeal.
be that, or it could be, like, tightness or, like, a pit or just pressure.
Hmm. Sure, sure. So I think that this segues beautifully into attachment theory. Would you kind of discuss that a little bit?
Sure. So this was developed incrementally since the 1950s, and it is rooted in the kind of relationships that we had from with our earliest caregivers. And what neuroscience now knows is we basically have a 2-month window initially when we're born to have enough nurturing and attention and consistent, satisfaction of our needs to for our brain to really develop into high functioning social beings. So for those who have some considerable neglect, threats in that first 2 months, their life outcomes are consistently less positive.
Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know about the 2-month thing. I've always heard, 7 to 8 personalities set in type stuff, but I've never heard about the
That's true
attachment on
too.
a 2 month. 2
Mm,
months. Like
mhm,
we're all behind the 8 ball now. Like we all have this that we suffer with in some way, shape, or form. And I think that it's really good to normalize it and just let people know you have an attachment style. You
mhm.
do. Um, it doesn't have to be there forever. You can combat it, you can change it. But again, 95% subconscious stuff.
Mm,
So talk about
I think the sound went out. Huh. So you can hear me.
I hit the mute button on my
Oh,
mic.
got it.
Yeah, good. Great grand. So can you talk about the 4 attachment styles and like a clue into each one so somebody can start at least recognizing how they operate and maybe how some of the potential partners or dates or whatever are operating on as well.
Mhm. So there's one that's considered secure attachment, which is we feel comfortable being close with someone. We also feel comfortable when we are separated from them. So basically, it's like the little kids who feel secure that if they need their caregiver, if they have an ouchie, the person will be there for them. Will understand. Will fix it. Will make them
Kiss
feel
the booger.
better. Yep. And and for the rest, the other two more common insecure attachment styles, or so they're called, which is basically just learning to fear certain emotions, learning to fear discomfort, and not having had the supportive, positive, nurturing support system from, or at least not consistently, from caregivers. So, on one end of the spectrum, we have people who are afraid of being abandoned. And so they have a lot of kind of acting out, which is basically, don't forget me. I'm still here. You're here for me, right? Right. And so that might be the person who really wants the match to message them multiple times a day. And if they miss one, it's like, oh my God, they don't like me anymore.
Yeah,
And
immediately jumping
mhm.
to a conclusion.
And on the other end of that spectrum, others considered avoidant, who basically adapted to some form of neglect, where some level of needs, whether it was emotional or just like they had to take care of themselves, they had to fix their own lunch, they had to tie that, like, they had to, run the household in some way at the age of
Poverty.
5,
Yeah.
that, like, it's better if I just do it myself. I cannot depend on anyone, and if I do, I will be in a worse situation than if I just take care of it myself and take care of myself. And so for those who say that try to be closer, it just feels, controlling, suffocating, restricting.
So what would be a hallmark of secure attachment, anxious attachment, and avoidant attachment?
So a hallmark, say for secure attachment, is someone who's warm, someone who's adaptable, like, and who's willing to have more uncomfortable conversations. And so for, let's say,
I
the
wanna
different.
I wanna give a like, an example here that just came to my mind for this
Oh yeah.
secure attachment. So, what came to my mind when she said that was they're able to talk about why their last relationship, marriage, whatever, didn't work, and they come from it from their what they did incorrect or what they could have done better, or what they learned about themselves instead of bashing their partner, which is kind of the norm
Mhm.
that I see. So,
Yes. Yeah, that and well, we just didn't have, a compatible, communication style, or so there's really, you're right. It's not blaming anyone or attacking anyone's character. And so for the insecure attachment styles, and there is a fourth that is considered less common, which is fearful avoidance. So it's where, for avoidance, so closeness feels intrusive and space feels safer, like the pressure's off. But for fearful avoidant, both are scary. Closeness is scary, but also distance is scary.
what would be a hallmark for that one? You said it's rare, but how would somebody kind of just get the, let me investigate this further? This doesn't mean that it's 100%. Do not diagnose your potential dates, you guys. But
Yeah.
I'm asking her for this so you can just go, huh, let me pay attention to that. So, what would be a hallmark?
That one's harder. Um, but for example, it could behaviors such as nothing is good enough, where it's always like a crisis, whether you do say try to include the person or make loving gestures, or if you try to respect their privacy or their need for autonomy, and then you don't do something. Both are major, major upsetting events.
Cool. And the other two, the avoidant and and anxious, what would be the hallmarks of those?
So for avoidant, it's keeping things light, and it is also preferring not to talk directly about things. So, like, where the relationship's going. So it's basically like in the moment. It's for this moment, let's hang out. And it's using really like distancing terms, very casual distancing terms. So it'll be yeah, let's hang, let's chill, let's
Yeah.
and often not directly asking. So it could be, "Hey, what's up?" And then wanting the other person to say, "I miss you," or "Wanna hang out," and then they'll say, "Sure."
Yeah.
But
Okay.
it's just avoiding anything, well, not anything, avoiding a lot of concrete or really emotional buzzwords or words about commitment or the future, just avoiding, and also not responding. If the other person does bring it up or ask a question, the other person may just pretend like you didn't say anything. I've had that happen.
Oh
It's
yeah.
like, did I think you heard me?" And they're
I
just not gonna go
typed
there.
that, right? I know it.
"Oh, I think you got the mute button again."
Geez, man. I did. I hit it again. I'm glad my microphone's so sensitive, but good lord. Um, and then finally the attachment, anxious
Oh, yeah,
attachment
the
style.
the anxious, that and of course, these may take anywhere from 2 weeks to 3 or 4 months to really come out.
That's good to know.
So, that's also why it's, a pretty good idea. I mean, there are if one is looking for casual situationship friends with benefits, then that's something different. But for those who are looking for longer term exclusive committed relationships, it helps to go slower and to really collect these data points over weeks and months. And so for the anxious attachment, it's it's often trying to be overly pleasing for a long time and wanting more contact and doing favors and I'm thinking of you and then building resentment over time when it's not reciprocated to the level that the anxious attachment person.
God, Sarah Ann, just say my name, why don't you?
Mm. And then there's kind of a blowout at some point. It's like, if you cared, this means you don't want whatever it is. Having built up that story over whether it's days or months of if if I could just do enough and please you enough or impress you enough. So it's really about how much I'm gonna make you like me and not focusing as much on what do I like or not like so much about the other person. How are they showing up, and
Yeah,
can I depend on them because I will I will do my best to try and convince them to show up, but that's not doesn't often work.
no, it doesn't work. That is my attachment style. Just to be transparent, you guys, I'm very aware of it. And how it would show up was for me would be a push pull. So if I did all of these cool things for you, because I'm also recovering people pleaser, um, if I did all these cool things from you and you didn't reciprocate in the correct way, that could vary, right? Um,
Mhm.
then it is very much, well, F you, I'm out of here. You're not who you say you are. You don't feel the way that you say you do. And I would pull out as well. And then I'd come back in and it's not fun. It's not fun at all, and it's very damaging, to relationships, and, yeah, it's something that I've started battling and to reform, and that isn't an easy process. So, why don't you talk about your workshop and your program because this is kinda what you do to help people.
So for my workshop called Master the Art of Smart Swiping, this and when you're getting your foot in the door, before you even have the match, this helps you have a few little hacks in your toolbox for when you're looking through profiles to pick up signs of, for example, avoidant attachment. For people who say, "I love my alone time," uh, "I love spontaneity," and I'll go anywhere at the drop of a hat, and talking about, I'm fluent in sarcasm, I'm laid back, and all of these kind of distancing. I am on my own. Like, I do things my way. Well, there's a clue. And so you can sit with that for a minute and say, would that really work with my style, what I'm looking for? And also with just photos. If the people say, I love to work out and I love to do all these active things, I'm a fire eater, and all of their profile photos are of them in their car, there's a disconnect there. Probably not. So if you're excited about the fire eating, maybe they tried it once or maybe they saw it once, but i- it's probably not as much of a part of their life as they're saying in words, because they're showing you in their photos that that's not really um, what they're doing and who they are at the moment.
Talk about the fish pictures because that's notorious. Men and their fish.
My theory on that is that's one of the few times the men have had someone take a photo of them in a number of years. So it's like, oh, cool. This is available to me. I'm going to throw it in. And
And it
and
shows something that they won, right? It's a treasure,
mhm,
it's a trophy, it's a look at me, I'm worthy
mhm.
of whatever, right?
Yep, I'm hunter. I'm I'm a successful hunter. Uh and probably not comfortable asking people to take pictures of them in the moment. So they had that handy. That's my theory. I don't know. But
I love it, I love it. Um, yeah, you guys should see her don't pictures. They are scarily hilarious, I guess would be the best word to
oh
describe
yeah,
them.
we and these are from actual just the apps. This is what was sent to me, and I took screenshots. They're men smiling and sticking out their middle finger at everybody. There's literally naked people in the bathroom, people who look like they're gonna fight you. They're like, "Ah." Like, yeah. So I talk about that in the workshop of how to to more easily rule people in or out based on what they say, how they say it, and what they're showing you. And for my coaching program, Decoding Dating Dilemmas, it's starting really even further back than looking at profiles on the app. It's looking at our own patterns like we've been talking about. And it's trying to decode the things that we assume we want or that a relationship should have or be. And to see, well, how's that worked for us in the past? Or what has and what hasn't worked? What have we gone for? And so it starts also with what like, what makes me happy? What happy can I also bring to share with another person?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so tell tell people where they can find the workshop, how they can register, time and date, all of that good stuff.
Oh, yeah. The workshop is next Wednesday, June 26th, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It's free online, and you can register at my website, which is settlingup hyphenated .com/workshop.
Fantastic. And I'll put that link below, you guys. Go. I mean, listen, like I said, Sarah Ann and I are true friends. But I find her brain fascinating, and I find her research and her dedication to having correct statistics, the early, like the newest, latest, and greatest research. I find that I find that amazing, and I also find it comforting, because sometimes when people learn a certain style or modality or technique, that is all they use, and they never update or upgrade their tools. And so therefore you might be getting, like Sarah Ann was talking in the psychotherapy land, that some of these techniques, modalities, whatever, are still from the 50s, and we don't live in the 50s. anymore, not at all. And so I like that Sarah Ann stays on top of the latest and greatest research, and I really appreciate that. So you guys go find her on settling hyphen up, settling up instead of settling down, right?
Mhm.
And her link for the workshop will be in my bio. Um, if you have any questions, let me know. I'll ask her. She can come back and answer in the comments. And I will also put her social media below. Just go follow her. She does TikToks, she does shorts, she does reels, and they are all interesting to me. Sarah Ann, thank you so much for coming and speaking on multiple topics that all affect all of us daters and relationshipers as well. And so I appreciate your time and your energy. And I know that you're just going to help so many people with what you do.
Thank you so much, Stacy. This was so much fun. And for the last little simple hack for everybody,
Yeah.
it's instead of focusing on a type, focus on how you feel you're treated by your matches.
So, anyone familiar with the Finance Bro song? I'm looking for a man in finance, blue eyes, 6'2", whatever that is, however that goes. Don't do that. That's what she's saying. Don't do that.
And there's
Um,
statistics on that. You do not get a return on investment if they earn more than basically what they need to pay their bills. It just
Interesting.
it does not help the relationship if they earn 200,000 or 2,000,000 or 2,000,000,000.
Wow. That is kind of a mind-blowing stat to me. Yeah. Well, I'll have you back and we can talk about that more in depth because that is fascinating to me because I think what most of us women identifying people say is that I need security, I need stability, and they equate that with a salary or
Yeah.
a position or a title or whatever, right?
Yep.
And you're saying doesn't matter.
Height and salary, those are symbols of security and safety, but how many of us have really felt that, whether we have someone, who's 6'5" or and is earning 300,000 or whatever it may be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fascinating. We'll talk about that next time. For sure. All right, you guys, thank you for sticking around for another episode of A Few Short Minutes, the pod, where I just want to remind you again, it takes just a few short minutes a day to rewire your brain for a better life. And if you want to know how to do that, you can just leave a comment below. Thank you for joining me. Go check out Sarah Ann's workshop, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for being here. I love you. Bye bye.